Now, I serve as a rifleman in the militia, fighting to free the frontier. I'm a long way from becoming a pilot. But when that day comes, I hope I can live up to the honor.
Initially, the plan was to add Titanfall 2 to my series of does it deserve a remake, sequel, but, you know, Respawn Entertainment shot that down. And I understand Apex Legends is incredibly successful. It is incredibly popular, and Respawn has every right to try to push all assets into that universe and create, you know, whatever they want. Like, there's rumor of a single player campaign. I would be totally down for that. Whatever. But you're going to tell me right now that Jack Cooper doesn't deserve, like, another shot? We don't get to see him and BT tear it the fuck up again? I mean, come on. This is easily one of the best first-person shooter campaigns that I can think of. If it's not in your top 5, you got to leave a comment below and tell me what's in your top 5. Because I can see Modern Warfare. I can see The New Order from Wolfenstein. But listen, Titanfall 2's got to be up there. It is an absolutely astounding game. And I feel like it has a bigger impact in the 4 to 6 hours that it's here than I think any other game has had in that period of time. Because with every other game, there's always these lulls, right? There's always these peaks and valleys. Titanfall 2 is all peak. It is all gas. It never stops being good. And I'm a massive fan of this game. And replaying it for the first time in a few years has opened my eyes to just the quality of this game. The gunplay in this game is so satisfying. And the amount of guns they throw at you, like that variety, is fantastic because you just have just a plethora of options. And it's, you know, it's fine dining at its best. And every gun feels good. Hell, even the damn Mozambique feels fantastic when you pop a headshot in and just watch the helmet pop off. My favorite gun personally, and this may seem blasphemous for those who play Apex, is the L-Star. When you're shooting humans with the L-Star, they just explode. I think that's the coolest reaction to that gun I think I've ever seen. I enjoy watching that all the time. It was like my primary gun when I got to the factory section of the campaign. I was just like, yes, I'm going to blow up everybody. I'm a sucker in first-person shooter games if you include wall running. If your traversal system is fantastic, I'm in love with it. I will absolutely play that game 10 out of 10 times. Now, there's no grappling hook in this game, and that is completely fine because wall running is so satisfying. Like getting around certain enemies and then shooting them in the head or hitting them with grenades or sticking them with one of the ninja stars is just, yes, that shit gets your blood pumping. It is super satisfying. The real star of the Titanfall 2 campaign are the Titans. And these fights are pretty thrilling. And they can be incredibly challenging, especially on higher difficulties. If you happen to play this game on medium, and that was my replay, I was just kind of blowing right through it. And it was kind of weird because I was like, man, I remember this game being a lot harder. And I think it was mainly because I was trying to get used to it again. Because I had played the absolute crap out of Titanfall. And with Titanfall 2, I was like, okay, you know, you're still super capable. And BT is an amazing Titan. And the fact that he can kit himself out mid-fight is something that's super interesting and also incredibly broken. But I love the fact that they, you know, the developers put that in there to ensure that the combat stays fast and it stays fresh the entire time, so you can strategize mid-combat. Like, is this weapon really working? Should I switch from the, you know, being able to mark enemies to being to shoot like massive clusters of rockets at them? Like, what should I be able to do? Me personally, I'm shooting rockets at people, and I'm gonna be able to like just absolutely overwhelm them with firepower. That's just my thought process. Pop a shield every now and then, right? But most of the time, rockets to your face. Once you start becoming proficient with the Titans and all the different loadouts, I think even the boss fights become pretty trivial. I remember the first time you fight Kane, my entire mindset was, this dude's talking shit. He immediately kills another pilot, so he has to be a big threat. But you walk in, and they give you a new weapon, a new loadout, like almost immediately. And I make really short work of him. And once you do enough damage and you start building up your core, once you use your core, it's over. You'll absolutely melt most bosses, especially if you catch them outside of one of their defensive abilities, outside of one of their dashes. They will absolutely just die. And it's really entertaining because most of the Titan pilots are talking so much shit to you during this game as if you are nobody. And technically Jack Cooper isn't. He's, he was a rifleman and he becomes this pilot, this uber capable pilot. And they're just talking all this shit and they're just so confident and so cocky. And you feel like, man, there's got to be something that one of you realizes after I've killed the third or fourth boss that I'm him. That Jack Cooper is Himothy. And BT is also him. It was the weirdest thing. It's super funny because you can kill them like mid-sentence as they're trying to talk shit and act out they're just so superior to you, and then they die. You're just like, yeah, okay, good talk, good game. I'll see you next time. I just enjoy the fact that in Titanfall 2 that the developers are willing to separate you and BT constantly. And I think it's important because Jack, as he's learning to become a capable pilot, is also really proficient with all of his weapons. Dude's a killing machine. You're going to walk up and start stealth killing people and get into these really funny animations that seem a bit excessive. I mean, you didn't really have to knee him in the head or shoot him multiple times or whatever. I mean, the dude was down. And it's always funny because if you do it in front of a group of enemies, you're just like, what do we do next? And then you snap out of it. You go back into first person. You start just decimating people. I've always found it interesting because you're playing through this game and they take you out of the Titan. And generally when you are, if you think it's the highlight of the game, if you think being in the Titan and all these fights are the highlights, and then they immediately put you into Jack Cooper's shoes, and then you have to, work on your traversal, you got to parkour, you got to do all this extra stuff. He's still so much fun to use because he has a similar diverse kit in comparison to BT. And they make it so much fun because a lot of these sections become these really interesting puzzle platforming sections. And that's mind-blowing to me that Titanfall 2 did this amazing kind of balancing act that I think a lot of games fail at. I think there's a lot of flailing when you get into certain games where the pace slows down because they're like, you have to investigate this area and something's just not completely obvious to you as the player. You're like, where the hell am I going? Titanfall 2 is like, go straight. You see where all these really crazy things are being built in this construction area in this facility? Go straight. Start wall running on everything. Start double jumping. You're going to want to do that constantly. Easiest way to find your way across. Maybe I can't get to that platform. Maybe you can. Maybe if you time your jump properly and you gain enough speed, you will make it. It is exhilarating parkouring in this game. It is so much fun when you're wall running side to side and then jumping off platforms that are moving. You have to time all this stuff. It's one of these games that it feels so good to be in rhythm and in motion. And I think that's one of the reasons why Titanfall 2's campaign is just so entertaining, because every section brings a new challenge. Most first-person shooters tend to falter when things get repetitive because in your head you're telling yourself, well, there's only so much you can do. But Titanfall 2 tries to put you in situations where you can utilize almost all of your abilities in different areas. And even when you're in an area that seems like it's going to be an ambush, you're going to get attacked. And let's say, for example, Ash, and she's trying to play with you, and she's like, oh, I'm going to throw all these different enemies, and no one's ever survived these experiments. And you're just like, okay. But you can just wall run on certain areas. You can get above enemies. You can slide around them. It's one of those things where if you just play the game the way it's meant to be played, meaning you use traversal and gunplay together, and you don't stay still. Because you're probably not going to have as good of a time with Titanfall 2 if you stay still. If you're constantly in motion, you're probably going to have an amazing time with this, because it's meant to have that type of freedom of experimentation in combat. Because when you're using traversal and the gunplay at the same time, it really works well. And it's surprising, especially considering how fast you're moving at times, how accurate you can be with all these weapons. And of course, you do have kind of a get out of jail free card if you happen to get yourself surrounded in your cloaking ability, which is broken. It's really funny getting into a firefight with a number of enemies that are just surrounding you. And it doesn't matter if they're like the bots or, the human enemies, and you just go cloak, and then everyone's like, where did he go? And you can do it right in front of an enemy. I just like, I find that to be the most entertaining shit. It's like, I gotta get out of jail free, baby. I gotta get out of here. I'm not trying to die. Let me just cloak really quick and just break their line of sight. And the moment they break the line of sight, the enemy AI is so dumb, they're just like, yeah, he's not here anymore, guys. You know, it's like the Metal Gear Solid thing. What was that noise? Huh? What was that? Where are they? That's essentially what happens in Titanfall 2. It's as if you never existed. And it's really funny when you appear right behind them. They're like, oh no! And you just start capping them so quickly. I guess you can take that as an insult to the AI, but it is really funny when you see it happen constantly throughout the campaign. Yeah, I'm having difficulty trying to find fault in this game, if I'm being honest. Playing this campaign, I've played it now 3 times. It's the first time I played it on PC. And I thought to myself the entire time, outside of the boss fights, I think, and it's a minor gripe, by the way, because I think it's more entertaining for me to absolutely murder that boss who's been talking a ton of crap to me, rather than me struggling the entire fight. Because the only boss you should have trouble with is probably Sloane. And that's only because she disappears, you know, every time you bring her to about, you know, a third of her health. So that can be kind of frustrating. Because you would think you would just breeze right through it, and I'm pretty sure there's a speedrun out there where you can just one cycle her, but for the most part, I think she was the toughest boss. I think I think fighting Viper was fun at first, and then I switched to the sniper rifle, and then absolutely murdered him. And I thought that was pretty entertaining, and I was like, oh look, there's Valk's dad, and I was like, oh look, there's Valk's dad. So yeah, I think Sloane is probably the one fight you might struggle with, mainly because her primary ability will actually melt any shield that you have. You don't have to worry about the other Titans that they throw in. It's just Sloane having that ability to immediately eat your shield and your health. It's pretty frustrating. But beyond that, yeah, everyone is pretty simple. I mean, I did find it kind of shitty that you didn't get to fight Blisk. The entire time, this dude is just, you know, he's a mercenary, so he's not really, I don't know if he's even a bad guy, honestly. Blisk is just kind of an opportunist. And so you end up killing Sloane, and he's like, all right, cool. Here's an Apex Legends card. I think you do well in this arena, obviously. And then, yeah, I'll see you next time. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll hunt him down or something. But, you know, unless he's on the IMC side, you're really not going to see him again. So I think that was probably the only frustrating part about the game, was that some of the boss fights, some of these Titan fights were just kind of easy. Even so, I mean, if that was the one flaw, it's a minor gripe still, because being overpowered in these types of games, just having that sensation is just fantastic. You would think that with every peak that there would have to be some big lull, and there's not. And I think that I find that very interesting, because with most games, especially first-person shooters, there's always going to be something that breaks up the pace and makes it, you know, awful, or makes it a trudge. But with Titanfall 2's campaign, it's not like that, because I think that almost every peak, it just immediately pushes to another peak, and it just stays consistent throughout the game. And I found that most games could probably benefit from that, but you'd have to be this short in length. You could not be anything more than 4 to 6 hours. If you were longer than that, I think you would just exhaust the player. You could only get us hyped and, you know, excited for this long, because 4 to 6 hours, that's like the sweet spot. And the fact that you had this white knuckle ride the entire time is brilliant. It's one of the most interesting things I think I've seen in game design, because you get to that point in the game where you and BT are at the IMC laboratory, and you have to figure out what happened, what's going on, and then you start having these time distortions. And man, I'm telling you, there was a game that came out years ago called Singularity, where you could control time, and that's all I kept thinking about. But the implementation of it in Titanfall 2 is so much better, and it's only for this short section, because Singularity, the entirety of that game was time control and manipulation. And in Titanfall 2, it's like, here's a, I don't know, 45-minute section of the game, and they did it better than a full game release, which is insane, in a compliment to the devs. And by the way, this section at the IMC laboratory, I would consider it one of the best sections in gaming history. And I put it up there with like the ashtray maze from Control. If you've never played Control and you've never gone through the ashtray maze, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like it's a section of a game where your mouth is completely like your jaws dropping, you're kind of drooling a little bit, you're blown away by the things that are happening. You're also blown away by how well it's implemented. And that's something that's super important to identify, because a lot of games will give you a hype section, but it's only hype for a certain period of time, because then it starts to fall short because the mechanics are not implemented well. There's not enough, the world design isn't great. In Titanfall 2, like that entire time distortion section where you're constantly switching back and forth, it is one of the most carefully constructed and one of the best designed sections I have ever played in a game. It is perfect. And it is something that I would honestly love a full game of. And I know that there are other games that have tried to dive into it. I talked about Singularity. I should have mentioned that Dishonored 2 had an entire section just like that, but I feel like with Titanfall 2, it was just better implemented, and it was far more fun. Like, it is so much fun taking some of these enemies and just jumping in and out of time to get behind them. Like, could you imagine how confused you'd have to be? That you're trying to call it in. You know, you're like, is he cloaking? No, he's literally just appearing in front of me. He was there 1 second, he's not there anymore, and he's killing us. Please send help. If I ever got that call and I'm security, I'm not showing up. You're not going to see me because I am not dying to some mysterious time hopper. This ain't Looper. Get that shit out of here. So with a game that has so many iconic campaign moments, you're probably asking yourself, you've never played Titanfall 2. You've played Apex, but you've been kind of hesitant to play this game. Let me just say, stop what you're doing. Play the campaign 4 to 6 hours. Play some of the multiplayer. You're going to love it. But if you're wondering why Titanfall 2 wasn't an immediate success with how awesome this game is, with how iconic some of the moments are, it's primarily because EA left the game to die. This game released on October 28, 2016. You know what game released a week prior to that? Battlefield 1. And the next month, Call of Duty came out. So for whatever reason, and it just blows my mind because they could have released this game in like February and August, some other time, EA sabotaged their own property. And I love Titanfall 2. I think it's a better game than Battlefield 1. And I would take it over almost every Call of Duty, with the exception of probably Modern Warfare, because I was hooked onto that game. But Titanfall 2 is fantastic. And it has an incredible campaign. And it's one of the things that I feel like if EA had just done its due diligence, then maybe Respawn would have had a Titanfall 3 up for us right now. But instead we're here, and you're always hearing someone say, man, I really wish Respawn would work on Titanfall 3. And it's just like, me too. And I think every fan of Apex Legends, anyone who's ever gone back to play this game, has nothing but praise. And that should really be a great indicator for Respawn to kind of like throw a bone to the Titanfall fans. Because that's what we want. And I'm certain, listen, I'm 100% certain if an Apex Legends campaign were to come out, because of all of that lore and all of that build up, I think they could nail it 100%. But I also think that's unfair to the Titanfall fans. I think people want a Titanfall 3. With all that aside, let's talk about the ending sections of Titanfall 2 and why it really left open the door for a sequel. So as you're moving past the IMC laboratory, you discover that the IMC is using a new weapon called the Fold Weapon. And that uses time displacement technology that was found at the IMC lab that's going to destroy entire planets. So obviously, shit is hitting the fan. So you have to send out this message. Cooper and BT head over to an IMC communications array, and they need to broadcast this information to Commander Sarah Briggs, who's the head of the militia corps. What's really funny is that this probably features my favorite boss fight, only because Richter is just a dead ringer for Arnold Schwarzenegger in terms of, like, if you've ever seen the movie Total Recall, there's a part where Arnold kills a character. He throws him like literally off this ledge. And he's like, see you at the potty, Richter. And it is like, that's all I kept thinking about. And you get that achievement as well, but I thought I just could not stop laughing that they actually made this character in the game. And once again, the boss fight was kind of disappointing because it's really easy. I was just using the core so quickly and just melting right through it, but it was just my favorite thing. So after you get done with that, you then go ahead and you make that final push. And you fight Viper, Valkstad, you kill him pretty easily. And then Cooper and BT are working to secure the Ark. Then the ship crashes, BT gets incapacitated, and then they're captured by Bliss. So in your head the entire time, like I said before, you're thinking, I'm going to kill Bliss, it's going to be this amazing fight, and that does not happen. So Bliss dismantles BT, and pretty much you have this core, you have BT's core, and he gives you the smart pistol and a knife. Who cares about the knife? That smart pistol section makes you feel like the single most badass character in the game. It is insane how much fun it is to just be wall jumping and randomly shooting and popping people's heads off. If you play the multiplayer, you know what the smart pistol is good for. It is the same thing here. It is just so much fun to use. So as you continue pushing and you have that major fight with Sloan, which is just like, whatever, who cares? Sloan is just some side character at this point. You then think to yourself, okay, what comes next? Like, what could potentially be the perfect ending for Titanfall 2? I know people are going to disagree with me with this because, no one, you could see the sacrifice play coming, but to have it be as emotionally charged as it was, because throughout the game, Cooper and BT grow close. You can see the chemistry, you can see the camaraderie. They're funny, they're constantly talking shit to each other. BT's, logical quips, obviously they're made humorous throughout the entire game. And so you think to yourself, you almost lost him once, you're gonna lose him again, and that shit is crazy because as you're getting shot out of this cannon, you are absolutely just like, oh shit, that's the end of BT. The sacrifice play works out so perfectly, and it is absolutely devastating. I was debating as to whether or not I should just let the cutscene roll and let people feel sad for a moment, but I'm not a monster, even though I want to be. Anyway, now if you made your way to the end of Titanfall 2, you're going to notice that there's Cooper's helmet and it starts to flash. And the message that it's flashing is Jack and binary. And that suggests that BT's AI has survived, which opens it up to a sequel, which, as I've stated multiple times, we've never got, but the potential is there. So who knows? I made this video because I want to bring more attention to Titanfall. I love Titanfall 2. I love the campaign, love the multiplayer. I think I love the campaign more, primarily because I just think it's one of the best I've ever played in an FPS. I think it's top 5 all time. And I really want you, whoever's watching, to leave a comment below and tell me what your favorite campaign is currently in the FPS genre. And what you think is the most underrated FPS campaign. I wonder what people are going to say. I'm hoping to see some Infinite Warfare. I really think that was pretty good. I don't think it was terrible. Like, I wasn't a fan of like the multiplayer for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, but the campaign, really liked it. And that's going to do it for this video. So if you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.